Pete Iorizzo has been covering the Capital Region sports team for a very long time. Has he ever seen a performance better than what Nico Clareth delivered last night to put his team on his back, down by 17 points the second half? By the way, I do want to give a salute before we bring Pete on, Zach. We should give a salute to Greg Dashnaw. Okay, right now he is the trainer. We talked about him on Friday, saying, "All right, we got an ankle injury here going on with Nico." And he got yeoman's work here to work his magic as a trainer. And Hammer's been around for a long time. It goes back to the Dean days to get Nico to where he was. I mean, he couldn't even walk. Whatever day it was at practice, he's on crutches and didn't play on Saturday. And I'm telling you right now, Jimmy wasn't going to really put him in the game in the second half. You know, just that ankle wasn't right. And then, and then there he is. So Hammer, Big Board Sports salute, man, to trainers getting it done. He's kind of the unsung hero. He won't get a lot of the pub, but behind the scenes, I guarantee you, he was going through one treatment after another from Greg Dashnaw to get him back on that court. And I've seen Dashnaw work his magic, as Jay Geiger has worked his magic at UAlbany with players, and you go, wow. You don't hear a lot about him. You know, they don't get a lot of credit. But give those trainers credit. In this case, give Dashnaw, Hammer, a heck of a lot of credit. Let's bring on Pete Iorizzo. He covered the game. The headline in his column this morning is Nico enters basketball lore. Good morning, Pete Iorizzo.
Hey, good morning, guys. How's it going?
Oh, we're great. Phenomenal. I was home watching it on ESPN3. Couldn't believe what I was seeing. Is this the greatest individual performance in terms of one player carrying his team on his back to win a game that you've seen?
Yeah, I was trying to think last night if I could remember. Now, my Siena history only goes back 12 years, so I didn't witness any of the Mark Brown days in person. But I was trying to think of a game where one individual had so much influence all by himself on the outcome, and I couldn't come up with one. I mean, certainly, in the Fran McCaffrey years, there were games where Kenny Hasbrook or Evan Euclid would hit 30 points, or Alex Franklin would have 20 and 20. But it was always, there were so many great players on those teams that it always seemed on any given night it was sort of spread around. I can't remember a game where just one guy in and of himself carried a team to a win like Clareth did last night. It was really amazing to watch. You sort of run out of adjectives to describe it.
You know what? I'll need some help from Siena fans here this morning, but I've been here for 30 years. Now, you hit me with that off the top, Zach, this morning. Have I ever seen? You know what? There was a performance by Doremus Bennerman back in the day, back in the late 80s, Mike Dean's coaching, that I'm pretty sure had 40 at Madison Square Garden. And I forget. I want to say it was Villanova. Probably not. It was a good team. Siena won. He scored 40 in an NIT game at Madison Square Garden. So before I get too far ahead of myself and get caught up in the moment that I've never seen anything like this before, with Nico got 27 in the second half to get his team to a victory. Let's double check the Doremus Bennerman NIT Madison Square Garden, because that all of a sudden is creeping in to my little brain. I could be wrong, but perhaps I'm not. But how about the Nico story, Pete? I mean, what an up and down year. I mean, he missed 7 games to just kind of get away and clear his mind. And as you wrote this morning, I mean, he and Jimmy Patsos have a really unique relationship.
Yeah, I mean, if I had said to you on I think it was January 13th, which was the day he began his leave of absence, and one day after the ridiculous moment where he tries to check into the game with his earrings, then if I said to you at that point that Nico Clareth is going to be the guy who is the hero of the semifinals and beats Monmouth and brings Siena to the championship game for the first time in 7 years, I mean, you would have thought that was crazy. I mean, people wondered if Clareth was ever going to play a game again at Siena, and then while he was on his leave of absence, the team actually started playing better. And I think there were people who wondered, maybe Siena's just better without him. I certainly doubted that he'd ever be back this year, let alone back in a position to lead the team to the championships. I mean, you're right. When you say it was an up and down year, I don't even think begins to describe it.
No, I mean, look, when he finally did return, it shocked everybody, because prior to that, you just got the feeling, even from the little that Jimmy Patsos was saying about Nico, that really in the back of his mind, he wasn't coming back on this team. And then Super Bowl weekend, they go to dinner, and the next thing you know, he's on a road trip. I forget where they were going, but he's on a road trip somewhere, and then we're getting the tweets. And I think Mark Singelace was there saying, "Yep, here he is. He's here and he's warming up. He's going to play tonight." Are you kidding me? So
yeah, and then came back and started. Played pretty well too. Seemed to find a nice niche for himself. With the team through down the stretch in the last couple of weeks.
It was an amazing performance, Zachary By. No doubt about it. And you were in the house as well. What was the atmosphere like? I asked Zach this question. I'll ask you. And we now have the attendance, which was, 5,400?
Yeah.
So 5,400. Certainly not the largest crowd they've had. I mean, they've had numbers of over 7, and I would have thought a 4:30 game in a semis against this team would have produced that, 7 number, and maybe they'll get that and then some tonight. But what was the atmosphere like in your opinion, Pete?
I think that games like this, I think that's where the home court advantage comes into play. I thought Mark Singelace wrote about it today in his story, and I was thinking the exact same thing in the second half. It reminded me so much of the game back in, I guess it would have been 2009 in the semifinals when Siena came back to beat Loyola. And I think Siena was down 16 or 17 in that game as well. And obviously Jimmy was coaching Loyola in the time. I thought it was a much bigger crowd that day, if I remember right. There were probably 8,000 or 9,000 people there. But I thought in the second half of that game, the crowd was a huge factor as Siena started to make a run. And I thought it was the same thing yesterday. I thought, as Clareth starts making 3-point shots, and every time there's a timeout, the crowd's going crazy. Going into the timeout and coming out of the timeout. I mean, it wasn't a huge crowd by any stretch. 5,400. I think it's kind of disappointing actually. But when you have as many students as there were there, they made a pretty good amount of noise, and you could just see the body language. There was one timeout in particular. It might have been the under 4-minute timeout in the second half. That it was just such an incredible stark difference in the body language between the two benches, looking at the Siena players, kind of, waving for the crowd to get louder, and they're kind of high-fiving in the huddle, and, the Monmouth players are, just kind of very stoic over in their huddle. I think that's the one case where if you're going to have the tournament in Albany, you've got to live with the fact that in situations like that, there's going to be an advantage to Siena.
Pete, do you think they ride out the emotion tonight against Iona and get back to their first NCAA tournament since 2010?
I have given up on trying to figure out this team a long time ago, so I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen tonight, other than it probably will be something totally unexpected, one way or the other. On the one hand, you're right. You could look at it like Siena's just there's some kind of destiny thing going on here to spark a performance like there was last night, or is it how difficult is it to come back and get the adrenaline going again just 24 hours later? What can they get out of Nico Clareth tonight? I think he played a lot more minutes than anybody thought he was going to last night. And, can he come back and do it again tonight? I don't know the answer to that. Iona's beat them, I think, 7 straight times now at Times Union Center. So obviously it's not a building that Iona is going to be intimidated by. But on the other hand, is it just law of averages here? Is Siena due to beat them at home at Times Union Center at some point? Yeah, I don't know. If you ask me to make a prediction, I have absolutely no idea. I think that we learned a long time ago that trying to predict anything with this team is kind of a fool's errand.
There's no question. But since we're in the business, at least we are predicting. I'm going to go out and not even out on a limb. I think Siena wins tonight. I think they take. How can you have a performance that is one for the ages out of Nico Clareth last night and not figure out a way in a championship game on your home court to win this thing? The improbable win, the shocker because of what Nico did. Don't you, in some form or fashion, have to follow that up tonight somehow? I mean, Levon Long didn't score a bucket last night. So, I mean, now everyone is like, all right, we get that win somehow last night, shocked the world. We got to come back and beat Iona, a team that they did split with, and a team that they are due to beat at the Times Union Center. I'm going with Siena tonight, Zach.
I'm going to agree with you. I mean, what I saw, the synergy coming together of a team, which this year it has lacked at certain points and certain stretches, particularly early on. I mean, you're starting to see Marquise Wright, you see J.O., and now you got Nico. I mean, I don't know what the impact of Nico tonight will be, but I mean, and it's home. I mean, let's not forget the inherent built-in advantage that if there was 5,400 there last night, there's got to be, I mean, Pete, what do you think? It's got to be 7,000-8,000 people there tonight, right? If Siena can punch their ticket to the tourney.
I would honestly, I was shocked that there weren't 7,000 or 8,000 people there last night.
Me
I
too.
thought 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon against the number one seed, and in a game that's only on ESPN3. It's not on standard cable. I really thought that there would have been a much bigger crowd there yesterday. I was really surprised to only see 5,400.
I was too, and you would think more people would want to go out on a Sunday at 4:30. Then they're going to, and even though it's a championship game, now you're talking 9:00. So you're talking late, and it'd be pretty darn easy to just sit home and watch it on ESPN too.
Right. I agree. That's what makes me wonder just how big the crowd will be tonight. The 9:00 start, and the fact that you can stay home and watch it on TV.
Pete Iorizzo, always a pleasure. Good columns all weekend long, and Nico certainly enters Saints basketball lore with that performance, the column that Pete Iorizzo wrote this morning in the Times-Union. Pete, thanks for a few minutes here on Big Board Sports.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.